The dazzling brilliance of Top Gun 1986 turned its cast into legends, but behind the laughter and the breathtaking aerial maneuvers is a series of fates stained with tragedy. From the stars who have passed, such as Val Kilmer and Clarence Gilyard Jr., to the faces now aged and withdrawn from the screen, each carries a sad story behind the fame. Below, I will unveil 15 life profiles where glory and tears intermingle, creating the most authentic picture of the tragedy beyond the limelight of Top Gun. Val Kilmer as Lieutenant Tom Iceman, Kazansky, the Ice Warrior and the Fading Flame. Val Edward Kilmer was born in 1959 in Los Angeles, where the Hollywood dream begins and where it also ends for many. At the age of 26, he entered the legend as Iceman, the cold, disciplined, and arrogant pilot in Top Gun 1986. His character was the embodiment of the ideal soldier, a warrior living for honor and principle. The cool intensity in Kilmer's eyes, his erect posture, and his confident smile made it impossible for audiences to look away. But behind that perfect performance, few knew he was a lonely and fragile soul. As the spotlight enveloped him, Kilmer quickly fell into the vortex of fame and expectations. He was labeled difficult and uncooperative because he demanded absolute perfection. Conflicts behind the scenes and a broken marriage to actress Joanne Whalley led him to gradually withdraw. Many said Kilmer always lived in his own world, where he was both a star and a lost traveler. In 2014, throat cancer struck like a death sentence. Surgeries and chemotherapy led to the loss of his voice, the most potent weapon of an actor. Kilmer did not surrender. He reappeared in Top Gun Maverick 2022 with an artificial voice generated by artificial intelligence in a short but emotional scene. That moment when Iceman could only communicate by typing silenced the entire world. That was no longer acting. It was a genuine farewell. On April 1, 2025, Val Kilmer took his last breath at the age of 65. He departed quietly without fuss, true to how he lived his final years. His net worth was estimated at around 25 million USD, but his true value lay not in money but in his resilient spirit. The man who once embodied the Ice Warrior then fought with his very life until the last breath. Tom Cruise as Lieutenant Pete Maverick Mitchell, the man who cannot land. In 1986, a 24-year-old with a radiant smile stepped into the cockpit of an F-14A Tomcat jet, and the world called him Tom Cruise. He didn't just play Maverick, the unruly, daring, instinct-driven pilot. He seemed to be the character. His challenging gaze, half-smile, and fearless spirit defined a generation. Top Gun turned Tom Cruise into Hollywood's brightest star overnight. But behind the bright lights, he was a man always running, not from enemies or bombs, but from his own solitude. Cruise was born in 1962, growing up in a broken family, forced to change schools over a dozen times due to his father's violence. The shy boy chose acting as the only way to control his fear. After Top Gun, he dominated the box office with Rain Man, Mission Impossible, and Jerry Maguire. He had everything: fame, money, audience, love, but he lost many other things. His two marriages to Nicole Kidman and Katie Holmes both collapsed amidst rumors of control and the Scientology organization. Cruise never stopped. He continued to make films, performing dangerous stunts himself, as if only when suspended mid-air did he feel truly alive. By 2025, Tom Cruise is 63 years old. He remains strangely youthful, still filming Mission Impossible 9, still climbing buildings, still piloting real planes. His net worth exceeds 600 million USD, but the thing he seems to have searched for his entire life cannot be bought: peace of mind. Fans call him the man who cannot land, because after decades of flying across every sky, perhaps Tom Cruise is still looking for the way back to himself. Meg Ryan as Carole Bradshaw, the smile lost in the past. Meg Ryan was born in 1961 in Fairfield, Connecticut. When she appeared in Top Gun, she was 25. Her bright eyes and radiant smile immediately convinced the audience that she was the gentle wife-loving Goose with all her heart. Although a supporting role, her Carole Bradshaw brought warmth and simplicity amidst the tense military atmosphere. A brief moment, but enough to launch an entire career. After Top Gun, Meg Ryan became the queen of romantic comedies with When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail. She was the icon of the 1990s, beautiful, innocent, captivating all of Hollywood. But that very idealization was a double-edged sword. As age set in the lovable leading lady roles gradually disappeared and Hollywood turned its back. In the 2000s, Ryan was embroiled in a noisy divorce from Dennis Quaid, followed by rumors of an affair with Russell Crowe. She withdrew from cinema, and the public was colder than ever. Loneliness led Meg to plastic surgery, a decision that altered her face so much that many people didn't recognize her. When she resurfaced, instead of applause, she received pity. Now at 64, Meg Ryan lives quietly in New York, rarely going out. Her net worth is about 85 million USD, but she spends most of her time writing and directing independent films. In a rare interview, when asked if she regretted leaving Hollywood, she replied, "No. I only regret believing for too long that happiness lay in the spotlight." Meg Ryan once said that Carole Bradshaw was the role that first made me feel truly loved. Perhaps that is why when Top Gun is mentioned, people still remember her. The woman with the smile, lost in the sky, forever 25 years old. Kelly McGillis, as Charlotte Charlie Blackwood, the tragedy of the woman who taught Maverick to fly. Kelly McGillis was born in 1957 in Newport Beach, California. When she accepted the role of Charlie in Top Gun, she was just 29, the age of dazzling beauty and confidence. She embodied the charming, intelligent, and strong aviation instructor who made Maverick Tom Cruise both infatuated and respectful. Charlie was not merely the film's leading lady, but also an icon of intellectual womanhood in the 1980s, a rare role model amidst the male-dominated military world. However, Kelly McGillis's real life stood in stark contrast to the powerful image on screen. Following the film's massive success, she became a sought-after star. But that glamour also opened a chapter filled with trauma. In 1982, a few years before Top Gun, she was raped in her own home, a memory that haunted her later life. She once said, "When people called me a sex symbol, all I saw was a damaged person." After Top Gun, McGillis appeared in Witness with Harrison Ford and was nominated for an Oscar, but then retreated from Hollywood. She married, divorced, and finally came out as a lesbian in 2009. Her career stalled as the film industry favored youthful, flawless beauty. Kelly suffered from depression and alcoholism for a time, then found peace working as a counselor for abused women. In 2025, at the age of 68, McGillis lives quietly in North Carolina teaching acting at a community center. When asked why she did not return for Top Gun Maverick 2022, she simply smiled. "I'm old and I'm comfortable with that." Her net worth is estimated at around 8 million USD, not substantial, but in exchange for the freedom and serenity she had once lost. Clarence Gilyard Jr. as Lieutenant Marcus Sundown Williams, the storyteller beyond the runway. Clarence Gilyard Jr. was born in 1955 in Washington into a military family. At 30, he joined Top Gun as the pilot Sundown, the cheerful, friendly teammate always smiling amidst the pressure of the elite pilot school. Although he had few lines, his presence on the aircraft carrier deck or in the cockpit warmed the audience's hearts. Clarence not only brought his smile to the screen, but also symbolized the enduring spirit of Black people in Hollywood, a place where opportunities were never equally distributed. Following initial success, he went on to feature in Die Hard 1988 and gained fame through Walker, Texas Ranger, where he played Chuck Norris's partner. At the peak of his career, Clarence shifted toward spirituality and education. He became a film professor at the University of Nevada, using his real-world experience to inspire students. But behind the classroom smile were sleepless nights, silent battles with illness and loneliness. Clarence once said, "Some roles are not just to be acted, but to live again what I have lost." His private life was not public. He chose quietude, moving away from the spotlight, dedicating time to his family and religious faith. But illness did not spare him. After a long struggle, Clarence passed away on November 28, 2022, at the age of 66. His passing shocked Hollywood, as few knew the energetic man had been silently suffering for years. His net worth was about 5 million USD, a small figure compared to the value he left behind. For Clarence was not just an actor. He was a storyteller, a teacher, and proof that sometimes true happiness is not found in the dazzling light but in faith and the peace beyond the runway. Tim Robbins as Lieutenant Sam Merlin Wells, the forgotten genius in the sky. Tim Robbins was born in 1958 in West Covina, California. When he acted in Top Gun in 1986, he was 28 years old, a youthful, energetic face. His role as Merlin was small, appearing in only a few short cockpit scenes, but Robbins carried an incredible cinematic journey within him. Not long after he became a star with The Shawshank Redemption 1994, the classic film that made his name known worldwide. However, at the height of his career, Robbins sank into internal struggles. He was a man of strong ideals, often criticizing American politics and the phoniness of Hollywood. His outspoken remarks led him to be shut out of many projects. His rapidly ascending career quickly stalled, and he gradually disappeared from mainstream commercial cinema. In his private life, Robbins had a nearly 20-year relationship with actress Susan Sarandon, one of Hollywood's golden couples in the 1990s. But in 2009, they separated quietly. Friends recount that he fell into depression, refusing all interview requests, living reclusively, only occasionally participating in small films he directed himself. Tim Robbins is still alive as of 2025 at the age of 67, but rarely appears in public. He spends most of his time writing music poetry and teaching theatrical arts. His net worth is around 70 million USD, but he seems unconcerned. In a talk he once said, "Fame is a cloud. I just want to fly again, like Merlin." Robbins's tragedy is not material loss but oblivion, a genius consumed by the very world that once celebrated him. Tony Scott, the commander of the Flight Brigade and the fateful fall. When Top Gun was released in 1986, Tony Scott was 42 years old, a British director who had just overcome years of struggle in Hollywood. He was born in 1944 in North Shields, the younger brother of Ridley Scott, director of Alien and Blade Runner. Tony had a personality opposite to his brother, impulsive, intense, and always eager to prove himself. Top Gun was his first chance to truly fly, not just in the sky, but in the world of cinema. Under his direction, every frame blazed like the summer sun. Every shot of the jet skimming over the blue sea became legendary. Tony transformed a dry military story into a symphony of youth and pride. But behind the director's eyes was a lonely man tormented by the feeling of never being good enough like Ridley. The shadow of his older brother drove him to work with a frenzy that led to exhaustion. Following the massive success, Tony became a top Hollywood director with Crimson Tide, Enemy of the State, and Man on Fire. Yet the higher he climbed, the more he succumbed to pressure and depression. Associates recall that he often stayed up all night adjusting the lighting for every shot, obsessed with every minor error. In 2012, at 68, Tony was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. On August 19th of that year, he drove to the Vincent Thomas Bridge in Los Angeles. In the midday sun, he stopped his car, left a few letters for his family, and jumped into the cold water below. The news of Tony Scott's suicide stunned all of Hollywood. The commander who had made his pilots soar so high ultimately chose to plunge into the abyss. His estate was valued at around 200 million USD, a massive fortune, but it could not buy peace. Top Gun is considered Tony Scott's pinnacle and testament, dazzling, proud, and ending with the sound of the wind rushing through the air, where he left his soul forever. Tom Skerritt as Cmdr. Mike Viper Metcalf, the last instructor in the sky. Tom Skerritt was born in 1933 in Detroit, Michigan. When he accepted the role of Commander Viper in Top Gun, he was 53 years old, nearly 3 decades older than his co-stars. In a film brimming with testosterone and speed, Skerritt was the voice of reason. Viper was a strict yet warm mentor, the one who reminded Maverick that only those who learn from failure can fly higher. Before Top Gun, Skerritt had appeared in MASH Alien and various television shows, but his fame never surpassed supporting roles. The 1986 film helped solidify his standing, a face of wisdom and courage. However, in real life, Skerritt did not enjoy the peace of mind of the character he played. He went through 2 failed marriages, lost contact with his children, and struggled with depression for many years. Skerritt was a perfectionist. He said he didn't fear failure, only the fear of being forgotten. As Hollywood increasingly favored younger talent, he quietly stepped away from film sets, choosing to live reclusively in Washington State, where he planted trees, wrote scripts, and taught acting to students. As he aged, his memory gradually faded, sometimes failing to recognize fans. But when someone mentioned Top Gun, he still smiled. Viper is still flying, just a little slower. In 2025, Skerritt is 92 years old, still alive, but very frail. He no longer acts, only occasionally appearing at memorials for former colleagues. His net worth is around 10 million USD, enough for a comfortable life. But the greatest value he leaves behind is the image of the instructor in the sky, a symbol of tolerance and bravery, reminding the audience that behind every young pilot is a teacher who once flew through the storm. Michael Ironside as Lieutenant Cmdr. Rick Jester Heatherly, the Cold Warrior and the Fear of Oblivion. Michael Ironside was born in 1950 in Toronto, Canada. When he joined Top Gun, he was 35 years old. No longer as youthful as the rest of the pilots, but that very ruggedness convinced the audience that he truly was Jester, the strict instructor who constantly challenged Maverick. Ironside's sharp gaze, deep voice, and restrained acting made the character Jester a symbol of authority. He didn't need to shout to be obeyed. On set, Ironside was obsessively meticulous. He requested direct conversations with Navy pilots to deeply understand air combat tactics. Though a supporting role, he treated it as an opportunity to relive his youthful passion when he dreamt of becoming a real pilot. Top Gun brought him fame, paving the way for a series of legendary villain roles in films like Total Recall and Starship Troopers. But the more successful he became, the more solitary Ironside grew. He suffered from diabetes, chronic back pain, from an injury sustained in his youth, and once lost his house due to a financial crisis. "I stood in front of the camera hundreds of times, but when the lights went out, no one stayed," he said in a 2018 interview. His greatest fear was not illness, but being forgotten, something most aging actors face. In 2025, Ironside is 75 years old, living a simple life in British Columbia with his wife and 2 daughters. His estimated assets are around 6 million USD. Not a lot for a career spanning over 40 years, but he doesn't mind. "I taught Maverick to fly. Now I just teach students how to write scripts," he said, half-jokingly. In the eyes of his fans, Michael Ironside is still Jester, the one who didn't need to win a single battle only to leave his mark on the hearts of the audience. Rick Rossovich as Lieutenant Ron Slider Kerner, the handsome man who couldn't beat time. Rick Rossovich was born in 1957 in Palo Alto, California. In 1986, when he embodied Slider, the muscular and confident pilot alongside Iceman, he was 29 years old at the peak of his good looks. With his toned physique, bright smile, and arrogant gaze, Rick was seen as a new male icon in Hollywood. The scene where he shows off his muscles on the beach during the legendary volleyball game is still considered one of the most sensual moments in 80s cinema history. After Top Gun, Rossovich continued to appear in Roxanne and Terminator, but the glamour faded quickly. He didn't want to play the handsome secondary lead forever, but Hollywood didn't offer him other chances. As younger faces emerged, he was excluded from the initial casting lists. Rossovich once said, "I didn't fall. Others just flew faster." He left Hollywood in the late 1990s, moving to Sweden with his wife, Gabriella, and their 2 children. From a promising star, he became an ordinary husband and father. Initially, the quiet life brought him relief, but it eventually turned into emptiness. When you're used to having hundreds of people watching you, hearing only the wind outside the door can be terrifying, he confided. Now, at 68, Rick Rossovich occasionally participates in a few small independent projects, not for fame, but for passion. He lives peacefully by the coast with assets of about 4 million USD. In one interview, he smiled when asked about Top Gun. "I thought I would fly forever back then. Now I understand everyone has to land. It's just that some choose a softer patch of sand." James Tolkan as Stinger, the stern commander and the shadow of old age. James Stewart Tolkan was born in 1931 in Calumet, Michigan. When he played Commander Stinger in Top Gun, he was 55 years old, a seasoned, stern, and authoritative presence. The line, "Your ego is writing checks your body can't cash," became iconic, symbolizing Tolkan's style, concise, powerful, but full of weight. After Top Gun, Tolkan continued to make his mark as Principal Strickland in Back to the Future, the image of the difficult teacher whom the whole world both feared and loved. Although never an A-list star, he was an irreplaceable face of American cinema in roles of authority. But behind the screen, he was an extremely sensitive and solitary man. For many years, Tolkan lived reclusively in New York with his wife Pearl. They had no children, and that was his greatest sorrow. As old age set in and his memory began to decline, Tolkan often rewatched Top Gun and Back to the Future, smiling and saying, "I used to yell at Tom Cruise. Now I just yell at the TV." At 94 in 2025, Tolkan is still alive, but his health is poor, and he has almost completely withdrawn from all activities. He lives off his pension and savings of about $4 million USD. Nevertheless, he is remembered by millions as the symbol of the commander, stern, tough, but profoundly human. His tragedy is the silence after the roar, when the man who once commanded the entire sky now just sits looking at it outside his window. Frank Pesce, the uncredited supporting role and the undying smile. Frank Pesce was born in 1946 in New York, growing up in a poor neighborhood where every cinematic dream sounded like a fairy tale. But he believed that if he knocked long enough, the doors of Hollywood would open. And they did not for him to become a star, but to become one of the industry's legendary supporting actors. At 40, Pesce made only a fleeting appearance in Top Gun, but he brought an authentic presence. The face of a soldier among the crowd, symbolizing the hundreds of unnamed characters who created the film's vivid canvas. He was the type of person whose name you didn't remember, but whose face you saw everywhere. Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run, Flashdance, and dozens of other works. Pesce's life was a journey of a man who never gave up. He once shared, "I'm not a star, but I live in their world and I'm happy about that." Yet behind the laughter and the lively personality was the sadness of a man who spent his life seeking recognition. As old age set in and his health declined, he developed dementia, gradually forgetting the roles he had played. Friends recounted that in his final days he would repeatedly ask, "Did I ever work with Stallone?" A question both sad and endearing. Frank Pesce passed away on February 6, 2022, at the age of 75. His funeral was simple, but the affection from his colleagues was profound. His net worth was only about $1 million USD. Modest, but the artistic legacy he left behind is far greater. Frank Pesce embodies the thousands of silent faces in Hollywood, the people who made the story real, but are perpetually forgotten in the final credits of the film. Whip Hubley, as Lieutenant Rick Hollywood Neven, the star who quietly faded on the real-life runway. Whip Hubley was born in 1957 in New York, belonging to the same generation as Rossovich, but possessing a completely different demeanor, more subdued, more internal. When he joined the Top Gun cast, he was 28 years old, not famous but full of potential. His role as Hollywood was the charming pilot with few lines, but the characteristic confident style of the 80s. Despite limited screen time, Hubley's handsome face and presence left a lasting impression on the audience. After Top Gun, he was cast in Ruski's Executive Decision and several television shows, but never achieved a breakthrough. Gradually, the big opportunities dwindled, and Hubley, who once flew among the brightest stars, fell into obscurity. He shifted towards producing independent films, but was unsuccessful. During challenging times, he had to sell his house to pay debts while working part-time in real estate. Despite this, Whip never complained. He once shared, "I don't think I failed. I just stopped flying at an altitude just high enough to see the sky." His life is simple, devoted to his family, and far from the stage lights. As of 2025, Hubley is 68 years old, living with his wife and 3 children in the state of Maine. His net worth is about $1 million USD, mostly from his small business ventures. He rarely mentions Top Gun, but whenever fans recognize him and call out Hollywood, he smiles kindly. "Well, at least I'm still in someone's memory." Whip Hubley's tragedy is not failure, but the gentle fading of light after having once radiated, quietly without fuss, yet leaving a long resonance in the memory of his fans. Art Scholl, the last pilot of Top Gun. Art Scholl was born in 1931 in California, a veteran aerobatic pilot who specialized in aerial stunts for Hollywood. When Top Gun began filming in 1985, Scholl was 54 years old, a seasoned man still passionate about flying like a 20-year-old. He was not an actor, but the true soul of the action scenes in the sky. The spins, inverted maneuvers, and wind-cutting turns all bear the mark of Art Scholl. On set, everyone affectionately called him the Professor in the Clouds. He taught the actors how to hold the control stick, simulated the feeling of acceleration, and told countless humorous stories between takes. Everyone admired the fearlessness of the man in his 50s, the one who could flip a plane at an altitude of over 3,000 meters just to capture a few seconds of perfect footage. But fate was harsh. On September 16, 1985, while filming an aerobatic scene off the coast of San Diego, his Pitts S-2 abruptly lost control. His last words over the radio were, "I have a problem." And then the signal vanished. His plane and his body were never recovered. He died at the age of 54, the very age when many people begin to retire, yet he was still intensely flying to make the film feel more real. When Top Gun was released in 1986, the closing credit, in memory of Art Scholl, brought tears to the audience's eyes. No one on the crew could watch the flying scenes without thinking of him. Scholl did not have great wealth, a few planes, a small film studio, but he had something no one else did: absolute courage. He died doing what he loved, and in Hollywood's eyes, that was the death of a hero. Anthony Edwards as Lieutenant Nick "Goose" Bradshaw, the wingman everyone has lost. Anthony Edwards was born in 1962 in Santa Barbara, California. When he took on the role of Goose in Top Gun, he was just 23. Not old enough to fully understand the loss his character was about to experience, but mature enough to infuse the role with a rare warmth. Goose was not the typical hero. He was a best friend, a father, a wingman, a kind heart amidst the cold world of pilots. When Goose died in the training accident, the entire theater fell silent. Many said it was the moment they truly cried during an action movie. In real life, Edwards was also a true Goose, gentle, quiet, always supporting others. After Top Gun, he did not seek the limelight, but gravitated towards more intimate roles. In the 1990s, he achieved success with ER, the legendary medical TV series where he won a Golden Globe. But then, just like his character, Edwards had to face a fall. He publicly disclosed that he had been sexually abused by director Gary Goddard when he was a child, a spiritual wound that stayed with him for many years. Instead of sinking into depression, Edwards chose healing. He started a family, raised 4 children, and later moved into directing. He often said, "I don't need to fly anymore. I just need to teach others how to land safely." As of 2025, at the age of 63, he is still living happily with his wife, actress Mare Winningham. His estimated assets are about 40 million USD, but more importantly, he is one of the rare people from Top Gun to find true peace. In an interview, when asked if he missed Goose, Edwards smiled gently. "He's still there, every time I smile." Top Gun, 1986, is not just a film about reckless young pilots. It is also a story about people, about hearts that know how to love, fear, dream, and fall. 40 years have passed, and the cast from that time, the faces that once shone brightly under the California sun, are now either gone gray-haired or living in seclusion. But all of them left a piece of their soul in that film, in the sparkling frames of a youth that will never return. Names like Tony Scott, Art Scholl, Val Kilmer, and Clarence Gilyard Jr. have become legends, not only for their talent, but for what they sacrificed. And those who are still living, Tom Cruise, Kelly McGillis, Anthony Edwards, Meg Ryan, also carry the invisible wounds of time, of fame, and of oblivion on their shoulders. They remind us that behind every smile, every performance lies a solitary world of its own. Top Gun is therefore not just a film, but a mirror of life where those who dare to fly high must also learn how to land. And no matter how sad the ending, they remain immortal symbols of courage, of the desire to live life to the fullest. Now share with us which character from Top Gun will you always remember. How did a smile, a line of dialogue, or a flying scene touch your heart? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to continue this journey with us, exploring the real stories behind the silver screen, where glamour and tragedy merge to create the magic called cinema.